So who's a fan of Jo Malone's fragrances? Now, I've been wanting to do a video on my favorite Jo Malone fragrances. Never came around, but today I'm doing it. I've got 13 fragrances here and I'm ranking it because you guys say that you don't like it if I don't rank it. So today it's ranked. 13 of my favorite Jo Malone fragrances ranked for you, coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. Yes, Jo Malone. Who's a fan? So I first discovered Jo Malone in the very late 90s, but I didn't really get into the brand until I was on burnout mode from overdoing really strong fragrances. The 90s were known for really intense fragrances. I think by the time the 2000s turned around and towards the end of 2000s, started getting weaker and weaker for me. At least I started noticing weakness. But since I was, in that burnout mode, I had really discovered Jo Malone as a great fragrance house for those fresh, realistic smells of natural things. Like Orange Blossom was one of my favorites. The Fig and Cassis was one of my favorites. Grapefruit was also one of my favorites. I had, favorites of the Vetivers. There were 2 Vetivers at the time, which are not here anymore, but they have a new vetiver with vanilla that's actually on this list. There was the cafe one, Agave and Cafe, really delicious gourmand, and a few others that I really liked. I think their most popular one is Basil something, which I wore. I'm drawing the blank with the name, and I don't own it currently because I got burnt out on it. It was like too much for me. But anyway, 13 of them here ranked, and I'm adding the Fig to the list because now it's available again. It was discontinued. They brought it back exclusively online only. But I have my original bottle. The label looks a little different than the labels now. Either way, I'll let you know what the 13 are ranked, as I said. But before I do, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. Let's get started. So the first one I'm going with is a very light fragrance focusing on Osmanthus, but this time we're focusing on the Osmanthus Blossom. This is Osmanthus Blossom, and it features Osmanthus, Petitgrain, and Cashmere wood. So this is a very light aromatic experience for me, with bitter green touches from the Petitgrain and then very light fruity touches from the Osmanthus flower with that Cashmere wood for the musky, woody, ambery, synthetic note at the base. It's a great scent. Again, it's eau de cologne because all of these fragrances are eau de cologne, so the longevity is probably going to be very light, and a lot of people complain that these are very light because they're not the least, they're not the most, they're not the cheapest fragrances. They're definitely on the pricey side, but I just think they're great for everyday wear fragrances that are not going to overwhelm anybody. But this Osmanthus Blossom does scream a little on the feminine side, but I kind of like it. There's an ozonic touch under there, kind of like the water. It's rainy kind of a smell, almost like lotus blossom or water lily or something. But it's a beautiful fragrance. So that's Osmanthus Blossom. The next one I'm talking about is Orange Bitters. Now, Orange Bitters is here at number 12, and I do like this one. Just when I was ranking it, it's ended up at the bottom because everything was smelling a little better for me, although it's a toss-up with the next one that's coming up, but I put it here. But bitter orange is like a, basically, Orange Bitters is basically like bitter orange note, very popular note in perfumery with amber, sandalwood, orange, mandarin orange, citruses, and also dried plums. It has a kind of a sort of holiday-ish vibe. Orange Bitters is also used in cocktails and things like that, so I quite like it. It's a cozy citrus, but a beautiful one. So that's Orange Bitters at number 12. Next is YUJA Cologne, and as I said, YUJA Cologne and Orange Bitters was a bit of a toss-up. Now, in comparison to Orange Bitters and YUJA Cologne is a little lighter, almost like the lightness of Osmanthus Blossom. And then when I'm comparing it with Orange Bitters, it does have a little more of a density to it. But I quite like the smell here with this YUJA Cologne. It's kind of a herbal, grassy undertone there with the Yuzu. And of course, fir balsam is in here, and then of course, clary sage. And I think I'm getting the grassiness from the fir balsam and the clary sage in contrast to the Yuzu note. But a great fragrance. I would wear something like this and like this when it's really hot outside, really hot, because they are definitely lighter experiences. Eau de colognes are the lightest perfumes you can get, unless you go a step below that, which are kind of like sprays, body sprays and things like that, which could be lighter in concentration. So if you're into really heavy scents, these probably are going to be not perfect scents for you. But I know there's a lot of you that don't like overwhelming fragrances, and that's why Jo Malone is perfect for those of you. But you know, I do like the fragrances that this company produces. I mean, their fragrances smell very realistic, and that's kind of why I did that kind of like pendulum swing from really intense fragrances of the late 90s to kind of like these very light fragrances from Jo Malone. Now I'm back to the intense. You know, every once in a while I crave the lighter fragrances, and that's kind of why I like to have these Jo Malone Eau de Colognes here in my collection. Anyway, that's YUJA cologne. If you like the idea of a Yuzu or something like that, definitely check that out. The next one I'm going to talk to you about is Basil and Neroli. So Basil and Neroli is a beautiful Neroli. Neroli with basil. Basil is a great green herb, really beautiful herb, Italian food, things like that. And this takes the beautiful basil and the Neroli and adds white musk to it. Beautiful, really beautiful green aromatic touches, green floral touches with that beautiful white musk. It's clean. And again, this particular one is actually smelling a little denser than these bottles. I don't know what it is about these two bottles, these kind of frosted glass bottles. The wearing experience seems a lot lighter in comparison to the regular eau de colognes that are in this collection, so I don't know what that's all about. But definitely there's a density here in comparison to those two fragrances, and it's a great scent, a beautiful scent. Sadly it's ended up here, but some of you like basil notes, green aromatic notes with this beautiful green floral note of the Neroli. Anyway, Basil and Neroli, a great scent. If you don't know it, check it out. The next one is a classic that I recently picked up that I wore way back when I was wearing the Jo Malones back in the early to mid 2000s. This is Pomegranate Noir from Jo Malone. So what I like about this one is it reminds me of the holidays. So the holidays, you think about more intense fragrances, and even though this smells intense, I feel like it's not a cologne you can wear at any time of the year, and that smell, kind of like if you're craving that holiday smell, you would, you know, wear something like this, even though it's not going to overwhelm, you know. Pomegranate Noir is known for pomegranate, pink pepper, Casablanca lily, Guaiac wood, patchouli, and cloves. So cloves was not mentioned on Jo Malone's website, but I get major cloves as a note here, and I had to, you know, add that note here in this mix. But it's a beautiful combination of the pomegranates, juicy, you know, berry-like smell with the pink pepper, and that beautiful Casablanca lily with the Guaiac wood patchouli. Very great scent. Again, it reminds me of the holidays. If you like the idea of a holiday-like smell, definitely try Pomegranate Noir. This one actually also kind of leans a little more masculine, I think, in comparison to some of the others that I've discussed so far. So either way, Pomegranate Noir, a great scent. We're going to one of the darker bottles next. It's the Cologne Intense. So these are supposedly higher concentration of perfume, and they do sell them for you know, more expensive price, but they come in bottles like this in comparison to bottles like this, as you can see. So this is bronze wood and leather, and I have a full review of this one on the channel. So this one has grapefruit, bronze wood, leather, and vetiver. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Dark Lord from what's the brand? Killian. And it also reminds me of Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Homme. So it has kind of like similar smell, but I like this one. This one's not as dense and thick and heavy. It has a lightness to it, and even though it's Cologne Intense, it's still an eau de cologne concentration, maybe a little higher, but a beautiful fragrance. It does have that little zingy, spicy grapefruit at the top, then it settles to that bronze wood and the leather and the vetiver. Of course, the fragrance Gucci Guilty Pour Homme Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Homme is known for the leather and the vetiver, so it's definitely here. So if you like that fragrance, it's definitely available in this bronze wood and leather fragrance from Jo Malone. And once again, this one leans very, very masculine, even more masculine than the Pomegranate Noir. So check that out if you like the idea of that fragrance. So this next one is one of my favorite Jo Malones ever, and I feel like it has gone through some kind of a reformulation. It doesn't smell as great as it once did. This is Grapefruit, but I wore so much of this. I had mini bottles, I had the large bottles, I had them everywhere because I just really loved this grapefruit. It's reminding me of grapefruit in a different direction, not necessarily the skin, more of the juice and the combo of the skin with a lot of aromatic notes. It's got rosemary, it's got peppermint, with also oak moss and pimento as a note. So it's kind of on the masculine side, you know. It has kind of like the oak moss, I think, in here adds kind of like a shaving, barbershop-y kind of a styling to it, lightly, not overwhelming. So it goes into the masculine direction for a grapefruit scent. It's not the juicy, drippy, wet kind of grapefruit. It's more dry, slightly zingy, slightly bitter, but beautiful. A very, very beautiful fragrance. I wore tons of this one. Grapefruit. Check it out if you don't know it. The next one is a fragrance called Oud and Bergamot, and I have a full review of this one. Go check it out if you don't know this one. And probably one of the better fragrances from this collection. Obviously, there's all of these are great to me because I own them, right? But this one, you know, it reminds me a little bit of Straight to Heaven from Kilian. It reminds me a little bit of Agar. Something from Atelier Cologne. They have a fragrance with the name Agar. I'm drawing a blank with the name. So it does remind me of some of those fragrances, but it's a beautiful combination of bergamot, oud, and cedarwood. It's fresh, it's refreshing, but still dense because of the oud. It's woody, a little animalic, not overly, not hardly at all, but there's the light touches of it. And it's a synthetic oud. It's a Western oud, not a natural oud. So it's tolerable if you don't like those really funky and, you know, natural ouds. But a great scent. It's classy. It's masculine. You can wear this one to the office and things like that because it's not going to overwhelm, because that bergamot totally freshens it up. But as I said, it does remind me of the fragrance of Straight to Heaven, minus the fruits and the vanilla and things like that with that one. It's not sweet much. And then also this Agar fragrance from Atelier Cologne. Check it out if you don't know Oud and Bergamot from Jo Malone. I quite like that one. This next one is also another fragrance I wore back in the 2000s. I wore less of this one. I felt it was a little overwhelmingly floral, but I was obsessed with the smell and its naturalistic smell of a orange grove when it's blooming with orange blossoms. This is called Orange Blossom, and it features notes of clementine flower, orange blossom, water lily, white lilac, orris wood, and vetiver. Beautiful, really, really beautiful. One time when I was in the early 2000s, I had just gotten my bottle and I oversprayed this so much. And I walked into an elevator. There were 3 women in the elevator, and I walked in with my Orange Blossom, and they were like so pleasantly surprised at how great it smelled. It gets great reactions, and it's a really, really realistic smell of an orange grove when it's just blooming with loads of orange blossoms. It really does remind me of it. That's why I've worn plenty of it. I've given it to my mom. Friends like it. Just the naturalistic smell of this one is top notch. If you like that kind of a smell, I recommend it. Totally do recommend this one. But some men might think it's a little feminine leaning. Either way though, if you like Orange Blossom, do check it out. It really does smell realistic. The smell off of the trees when it's really beautifully bloomed. So that's Orange Blossom. If you don't know it, do check it out. The next one I hear is probably the most popular, or one of the biggest selling Jo Malone fragrances. It's wood sage and sea salt, and this one is a beautiful, really, really beautifully cozy experience. It's wood, sage, and sea salt, and it features notes of ambrette seeds, sea salt with sage, and I know there's some woody touches under there as well. Ambrette seeds has a very beautiful muskiness to fragrances or adds, and the salt kind of gives you that beachy vibe, slightly, you know, coconutty or maybe like a suntan lotiony, and then the sage adds a beautiful green aromatic touch, and it really does capture your whole experience of being on a beach with this beautiful sage brush or something around you that you can get a whiff of with the smell of the sea. I think it's definitely one of their better fragrances. Also, it's not really anything special. Like, I've smelled things like this, but they've done such a great job with it that you can speak about it and praise it because it really does smell great. Either way, wood, sage, and sea salt, a great scent. If you don't know it, do check it out. So this next one is a fragrance that I recently just picked it up, and I was wearing it here and there, and I was really loving the way it smells. It features two of my favorite notes, vetiver and vanilla, and it's basically bourbon vetiver and bourbon vanilla from the island that these ingredients come from, the notes. So they're prized ingredients, and they highlight them here wonderfully. But for me, I feel like it's more vanilla than vetiver, even though the vetiver word comes first. I get more vanilla with this one, but the vetiver in here adds a smokiness, which is really beautifully contrasted with the sweet vanilla. The vanilla is not necessarily overly sweet and syrupy, but still there's sweetness there. And of course, it's vetiver, it's vanilla, there's also cardamom, there's some tea and grapefruit in here. Grapefruit is light, there's some light zinginess there. The cardamom spice is really nicely contrasted with the notes as well, with the tea. I really love it. One other negative about this one is it does remind me of the fragrance that's going to come next a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit, but a great scent. If you like the combination or the idea of vetiver and vanilla, definitely check this one out. It's a gourmand vetiver. And the fragrance it reminds me of a little bit is myrrh and tonka. Not a lot, a little bit. And this is my number 2 favorite. My number 1's coming up. And myrrh and tonka, it's been such a solid release. I think it's a great tonka bean and myrrh combination. And it works really great here. But there is a little bit of an aromatic floral lavender note in here, and of course there's some vanilla in here as well. The myrrh is a little, resinous and vanillic to begin with, a little sweet. Adding that vanilla with the tonka beans and lavender, I think it's a great combination. It smells great. It has decent performance. All of these are eau de colognes. Obviously the black bottles are the eau de cologne intenses, and I just love the way it smells. So that's myrrh and tonka at number 2. And my number 1 is the one that is exclusively on their website. It's Wild Fig and Cassis. One of the best fragrances featuring figs. It smells so amazing. It smells like the forest, it really does. The fig leaves, when it's a bunch of trees and you can get a whiff of it and really smell it, absolutely one of the best smells. I had recently featured it in a discontinued fragrances video, and you guys all said, oh, it's back exclusively on the website. Yes, sure it is. I just checked it before I put my notes together for this video, and it's definitely there exclusively. So this is my older bottle, dating back to the late 2000s. And I'm obsessed with the way this smells. If you like the idea of figs, so it's wild figs, pine, musk, cassis, and cedarwood, definitely check this one out. Absolutely amazing smell. Love the way this smells, and that's why it's my number 1. Thankfully, it's back. I don't know if it's reformulated and it's different than this one, but as an original fragrance, it's top notch. Anyway, that's Wild Fig and Cassis. My number 1, Jo Malone. My favorite, Jo Malone. What are your favorite Jo Malone fragrances? Let me know. Of course, this is all I have, 13 fragrances, and there are others out there, obviously, but this is what I have in my collection. If there's any recommendations you have for any other fragrances, let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. One thing I don't like about Jo Malone, though, is they have so many limited edition series in their little bottles. They just go through so many fragrances. It's like they're just cranking them out and getting people to buy these like limited edition fragrances, and then they're gone, And then sometimes maybe I think if they do well, they'll put them in the regular lineup, and it's kind of like a disappointing thing because you can't keep up. Like an average consumer is not going to buy all these fragrances that are cranking out all the time. Some people do, but I don't think I will ever. In fact, I don't think I've ever bought. I might have had 1 or 2 of their limited edition fragrances, but I generally do not. Let me know if you guys like their limited edition fragrances. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video on my favorite Jo Malone fragrances. All ranked, as I said. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Otherwise, please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.